Hey everyone, thank you for joining me. I'm a guy called Joe, and this is Bootstrapping Tools Community Counsel, where we talk through concepts and theories that help scrappy bootstrappers or entrepreneurs just like yourself figure out how to make the most out of their team and set themselves up for success. We'll talk through different methods to grow your team or different ways to optimize your operations. And before we dive into today's topic, make sure to check out our YouTube channel. Got lots of videos up there that go through all different types of applications and theories. Talk about how to work best with your engineering team, how to have a great distributed team in this remote world, and also tons of different types of applications like Google Sheets, Google Apps Scripts, Google Data Studio, as well as many others. Now, today's topic, we're going to be talking about Agile development. More importantly, setting the record straight for Agile development. And there's a lot of people out there that say Agile development is kind of like a very loaded term. People talk about it. It's really buzzy. People say, yeah, we got to be Agile. But not everyone really fully understands what Agile development really means. So here today, we're going to set the record straight so that if you are looking to introduce Agile into your team, or you want to try to fix Agile within your team, or just make it better in general, maybe it's working, but you want to make it better. If you follow these steps and what we talk about here, I guarantee that you'll be able to make your operations better. So let's dive into the slides over here. I want to actually talk about the Agile development process, just really high level, what it is not. And basically what it's not is it's not a silver bullet to success. It doesn't really necessarily matter what you do with Agile. Just because you introduce Agile to your development process does not mean that you're magically going to be super successful and produce a lot of code or development or products or whatever it might be that you're doing. It's not a silver bullet, so make sure that you understand that. It's more of a process than anything else. There's also not an instruction manual for development. Now, a lot of people think, oh, we're not following Agile. Oh, in Agile, you do this. But let's be real. Agile is not an instruction manual. It's more of a framework. It's suggested guidelines to help you optimize your workflows. It's not something you're supposed to follow to a T. It can help for sure if you do, if you're starting off from absolutely nothing. But I can tell you that the best Scrum Masters out there and the best development teams do not follow Agile to the T by the book. Every single law. It's not the Bible. It's not law. Now, how can it help your team though? Well, since it is a suggested framework for structure, if you're experiencing where your team is just doing everything willy-nilly and there's not a lot of like process in place, Agile can be a great thing to add to your team so that there's some more accountability and some more planning, and it's not just like a free-for-all chaos. It can also create flexibility in your solutions. A lot of times you'll see in a startup or when you're just building something, people are saying, we have to do this, so we're just going to do it. But in reality, things change. When you go to market, you're going to learn a lot from your customers. So Agile development with this frameworks can really help you kind of take a step back and take a look at what's going on exactly, and it gives you the flexibility to change your course. Which is really important when you're trying to create a successful business. Now, what it also does is it decreases the feedback loop. And you'll see in a moment here, I'll show you a few things that on how Agile development, how that cycle works. But because of the way that it's structured, you get a shorter feedback loop with your users so that you can learn from them and then change or course correct your plans to make sure that you're building the right things for your audience, for your users. So essentially, this right here is a really simple depiction. It goes in much deeper than this, but this is as simple as I can make it. You go from planning to building, and then when you release that, you have to measure what's going on. Measurement could mean a lot of things. It would be application analytics, going out, talking to your users, doing user testing, whatever it might be. You need to get that feedback loop shortened using this method so that you can go back to planning, using your learnings from that, and then figure out what you need to build next. Build it, release it, and then measure again. And it's like a continuous iteration that's infinite cycle where you're constantly learning about what you're building and taking those learnings and applying it to your plans for making your product or your services better. Now, I mentioned Agile Frameworks before. One of the more popular ones is Scrum. And what a Scrum framework essentially does is it gives you sprint cycles, and those cycles are typically 2 to 4 weeks. If it's less than 2 weeks, you're doing way too much work within your process, and that's going to just slow your team down. So try to keep the 2 weeks if you want to go short. And if it's over 4 weeks, then you're kind of edging towards the realm of Kanban, which we'll talk about in a bit. But you want to keep it to 2 to 4 weeks, because anything more than 4 weeks, then the cycle becomes a little too long and you can't get that feedback, which is a great advantage to using an Agile framework. Now, within Scrum, you also have sprint goals created at every cycle. So at the beginning of a sprint cycle, you're going to have sprint planning, and you're going to say, this is the goal for this sprint. We're going to commit to doing X amount of work or deliver X item or feature. So sprint goals are really important when you're using the Scrum framework. Also, you have scheduled deploys typically at the end of the sprint. I say usually here because there are some teams out there who will say, well, we just deploy whenever things are ready, and it's a continuous, deployment. A lot of teams are doing that nowadays. That's kind of more of a hybrid approach. But typically, if you're doing Scrum, you deploy at the end of that sprint cycle. That way, you don't introduce any bugs mid-sprint and then mess up what your teammates are doing. Scrum's really good for long-lasting priorities. So if you have an existing application or feature or service or whatever, and you're just constantly iterating it, Scrum is great for that, because what you get to do is you have this well-defined existing product already and you're just iterating on it. So you're planning out what you're going to do, and then 2 or 4 weeks later you say, we're going to have this release, and you talk to your users and then do it all over again. That way you have this nice flowing structure of getting feedback, building iterations, getting feedback, building iterations. Now, the other popular framework within Agile is Kanban. And for Kanban, it's a single work queue. So it's one list of all the things that you need to do for a particular product or service, and you just churn through it. And you constantly reprioritize that list either on a regular basis or as needed. And that list essentially represents what your roadmap is in a sense. So Kanban in that case is a little bit more flexible than Scrum, because with Scrum, during the sprint, it's highly discouraged to change the items that you've already committed to for that sprint. That's why you have sprint goals. Whereas Kanban gives you the opportunity to say, hey, new high priority just came in. Let's figure out where in the work queue, in that single work queue, that this slots in. And if there are other things that need to get pushed down, that's fine. You'll just let your stakeholders know, or let your users know, or just reevaluate, what those targets are. Also, Kanban gives you continuous deployment. So since it is a single work queue and you're not working off of sprint cycles where you have like scheduled deploys, what you'll essentially do is when a ticket or a task or a feature is developed, you're going to release it. Then you're going to get feedback on that, and then that's going to inform a new set of tasks or features that you might want to build, which will then go into the work queue, and then you reprioritize your work queue so that you have the highest priority things at top and the lower priority things on the bottom. There are some disadvantages to that, because maybe there are some features that you'll just never get built because it constantly gets pushed down. But that would also happen with a Scrum sprint cycle as well. So a bit of a disadvantage, but it really depends on how you prioritize and what's more important for your company. Because if you are getting feedback that you need to build other things, more than likely you're going to be fine in either one of these frameworks, because you're constantly always going to be building what's most important and not just going through the queue and trying to tackle every single ticket available. Now, Kanban is great for rapidly changing priorities. So I wanted to point that out. Compared to the long-lasting priorities, Kanban, because of its nature where you're always constantly getting in new requests and new features, and you just reprioritize the list to fit that in, it's really great when you have a lot of different things that you need to build or different features, and you're not maybe entirely sure which one needs to go first. It's really good for rapidly changing priorities because it's a little bit more flexible like that. But of course, like I said before, a lot of hybrid solutions out there. As I mentioned, Agile development, like the framework, is not an instruction manual. It's not a blueprint for whatever you're trying to do. It is a set of guidelines that you can follow. It's suggested, it's highly encouraged, because it can help you be better at your development. Of course, I don't know, like there's not really a name for it out there right now. Maybe you call it Scrumban, or I don't know, Scramban, forget it. Doesn't matter. The important part is that you want to plan, build, release, and measure. As long as you follow this cycle, you're guaranteed to have better results than you did before. And of course, everybody needs to follow it. However, I must say, just because you follow Agile and you do this correctly, where you're constantly iterating, you're constantly getting feedback, and you're closing that feedback loop and decreasing it, it doesn't necessarily mean that your product is going to be a success. You'll be on a much better track towards success, but it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed success. And the reason for that, because no matter how well you develop your products or how well your process is set up, you need goals and objectives. That's why you need to make sure that whoever is at the top, the leadership making decisions, I guess steering the ship, that they are clearly defining what the goals are and what the objectives are for whatever product you're building. If you have that and you give that to the team, then the team can plan accordingly, they can build, release, measure, and then constantly make sure that whatever is happening with the products, what they get out of from the measurements and the feedback from the users, those analytics, that it matches up with the goals and objectives, and they can continue to keep saying that it was a success or a failure and plan accordingly to that. But super important that you have both goals and objectives and also follow the process. Not to a T, of course, not blueprints. You can totally change it however you need. Like I said before, lots of hybrid approaches out there where Scrum cycles might have continuous deployment, and then there are some Kanban processes where they will release once a week or once every 2 weeks. It really depends on the team, whatever fits best for you. Agile is a framework. It's meant to help you to be better, not to have you follow it like law. Now, that's basically it though for this kind of very short setting the record straight for Agile development. If you do have questions about it or you have your own opinions, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. We're always happy to talk about it. I'm really passionate about process and Agile development. You know, it's been a part of me for a really long time now. My Scrum Master certification, and I've helped a lot of teams get onto Agile and also become better at Agile. But if you did like the video, make sure to hit that like button. It's the best way to support the channel and make sure that scrappy bootstrappers just like yourself can find this video, get Counsel, Community Counsel, on all the different types of concepts and theories that are out there to become better at what they're doing and make their company or their team better. We got lots of other videos coming out as well, so make sure to hit that subscribe button and also the bell so that you get notified once we release the next video. But I'm a guy called Joe. This is Bootstrapping Tools Community Counsel. It's been a pleasure, and we're out.